Hello, my name is Maite Ravatata. I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice. I'm happy to welcome you to my YouTube channel, and this is my first video that I will be posting on the channel. Now, this video, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because on the 3rd of May 2025, I launched a workshop titled Men, Women, and Relationship, which focused on understanding psychological differences for deeper connections. And during these workshops, there were a lot of questions that were asked. And unfortunately, because of time, I was not able to answer all those questions. So I decided to create this workshop for those that asked the questions, but also for other people who might also have the same questions. So I'm just going to jump right into it without wasting any time. And the question that we have here now is the person, I think, started with a statement, and they said, there is always a saying that you attract what you are. Will that mean if you are emotional, you will attract an emotional partner? All right, so this is a very, very interesting question. And it is actually true that most of the time we attract people who have similar traits as we do. However, this does not necessarily mean that it will be so in all cases. And as much as, people who are similar will be attracted to one another, it's also said that opposite attract as well. So it just depends on, the other personality traits that the other person has, and also your personality traits, where you might find that in some of the things that you both have, they're very similar, but in other things can be different. So it is possible for you to be an emotional person. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person that you would then attract would be also an emotional person. I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, you're more than welcome to ask again for further clarity in the comment section. So we will then move on to our second question of the day today. And the question is, why do men suffer from anxiety as much as women? Why don't men suffer from anxiety as much as women? All right, now this question, yes, it is actually very true, because according to research, it has been found that women suffer from anxiety as well as from depression more than men. So a lot of women have been reported, it's a high number of women as compared to men. However, there's also research that argues that this finding cannot be necessarily be seen as a true reflection of what actually happens, because women tend to seek help. So we get to record the depression of the women and the anxiety of the women because women are more willing to seek help and they are more willing to, to voice out and verbalize when they're not doing well. Whereas you find that a lot of men keep to themselves. So I wouldn't necessarily say most women suffer from anxiety as compared to men, but also I wouldn't, dispute the fact. So it's a very difficult question to answer, but I would say that according to my personal opinion, I believe that men suffers from anxiety just as women. It's just that men in most cases wouldn't be upfront and vocal about it. Okay. And then our third question is, how do I deal with emotional needs that my partner repeatedly fails to meet without being resentful or withdrawing? Wow, what an interesting question. I think it's so interesting that I'm going to read it again for those of you who might have missed it. So the question is, how do I deal with emotional needs that my partner repeatedly fails to meet without being resentful and withdrawing? With this one, it's very important. That's why most of us would agree by saying that communication is key to every relationship. We need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to understand each other so that we can able to meet each other's needs. So it all starts with being able to be communicative. And in so doing, communication in this case will help first for the person who's asking the question to understand the reason why the partner does not meet their needs. So in order for you to not be resentful, that would mean that you would be having an understanding. So you would understand why your partner is doing what they're doing, and you also have a level of acceptance of what they're doing. And so understanding can only come after your partner has communicated to you the reasons why they don't meet your needs, and therefore also that understanding will bring about acceptance. All right, so that's the foundation. I mean, obviously from what the partner then discusses, if there are issues that needs to be addressed, if the partner needs to be assisted in being able to meet your needs, then that should be the next step that is taken. Because I do believe that in a relationship, we are there for one another, and one of the core, I would say the core factors of relationship is being able to meet each other's needs. All right, the next question is, how does one gauge if questions are building or non-building? Okay, so this is in the case of infidelity. So if, say for instance, my husband had cheated on me, and then we decide that we want to work on things, and so we want to build a relationship and we want to work through it. Now, the questions that I might need to ask, like, when did it happen? How did it happen? And want to get so many details regarding that. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to get clarity, obviously, because trust has been broken. So that's a means of being able to gain the trust. But in the same breath, some of the questions that we might want to ask might not necessarily, draw us closer to one another in building. You see, so it's very important for us to first establish, do we want to work on our marriage and move forward, or are we working on being separated? And if the answer is we want to work on our marriage, then we will have to be very mindful of, myself, particularly in the situation, will have to be very mindful of the kind of questions that I'm going to ask my partner. Now, this question is asking, how will I know if the questions are building or they are non-building? So in order for you to know, you would need to know, what is the reason for me asking this? What would my knowledge of this, what difference will my knowledge of this bring? Like, for instance, if you ask a question like, how often did you used to meet up with this lady? So you want to know, because that helps you, put things into perspective in terms of times that he was not available for you, right? But if you ask a question like, how many times did you actually sleep together? And how did you sleep together? You see, now you're getting details that are not necessarily going to help in building, because in you knowing how many times they actually slept together, it's not how many times did you meet, it's more how many times did you sleep together and how did you sleep together, and wanted to get the details of the infidelity in terms of the graphics of what actually occurred. That can be traumatic rather than helpful, because now you're going to have these images of your partner now being intimate with somebody, which then would require you to then have to deal with and address. So I would say, a deciding factor should be, what is the reason why I want to know the answer of this question? How will me knowing help me build, or will me knowing help me destroy? Not help, but I'm just saying, will it lead me to building, or will it lead me to destroying? Okay, and then our next question, we have quite a number. Okay, here is, why do people change after a few years of marriage? Now, change is inevitable. As people, we evolve, we are constantly growing, and we do change, over a period of time. And I do suspect that this person who had asked this question, probably their partner might have been treating them in a certain way, in the beginning of the marriage, which then changed as the marriage progressed. And the reason for this also could be several reasons why people change. Sometimes you may find that people change because it's just the natural way in which us human beings evolve over a period of time. Sometimes people change because of how we are with them, how we treat them, or how they experience us. And sometimes we see change in people as a result of those people not having been open with us from the beginning. And therefore now we are recognizing their behavior has changed, but actually it's not change, it's their true behavior, which is coming out after a period of time. The second question is, the second question, which was asked by the same person, is how do we get trust back after it has been broken, even with the choices of wanting to stay? So if there's been infidelity, this person did note down that with regards to infidelity, how do we then get the trust back when it has been broken if our intention is to build? Again, communication. But this kind of communication will have to be done in the presence of a professional most of the time, because infidelity can be very traumatic, and as a result, the people involved are hurt. Okay, so that is all for us for today. That we have come to the end of our first part of the video. I am going to do the second part of this video as I wasn't able to answer all the questions. So if you really enjoyed this content, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.